You want to have Melee that's well contested. You want to have storylines, and you want to sort of be able to create a little bit of hype around it and give people in the community a chance to experience high-stakes tournament matches when, particularly for the beginners, you often don't get that.
Welcome back to Melee Through a Lens, this time with an actual lens. I got my webcam working just in time for this new podcast. I'm really happy to get it up and started because it's just in time for me to start talking about the international Melee scene and ORB. Now, for those of you who don't know, ORB is a local startup by a couple of content creators in the Melee scene who decided that content here and tournaments could use a little more spicing up. One of the first topics I actually tackled was making the scene more enticing for newcomers and how we could attract new people to be more motivated to play Melee. So I was really excited to talk to these guys when it sounded like they had a few more answers than I ended off with in my first episode. It was also a great opportunity to talk about the international Melee scene because in a few weeks we have Phantom, Australia's biggest major, including a lot of international talent, including Zane, Mango, IBDW, and way more. I'm so excited, but more on that later. First, let's get to the interview. And don't mind my pacing and pauses. I'm not really used to podcasting without being able to edit out my pauses yet, so forgive me.
Let's get started. First thing, do you want to talk about who you guys are?
Sure. Brandon, you first?
Me first? All right, let's go. I'm Bundun, or my actual name is Brandon. Mm-hmm. I'm a streamer. I'm a powerlifting coach, and I run ORB with Berk, and we host cool events about Melee and Fight Night.
Yeah, so that makes me Berk, or Will, but everybody pretty much calls me Berk.
Sure.
And I used to be a powerlifting coach. That's actually how Brandon and I met. We made friends at the gym that we both worked at. I'm the other half of ORB, so Brandon manages all the streaming and things, and I sort of tend to do the logistical stuff and complain. But I'm basically just the other one.
All right. Well, I mean, I started this podcast a few years ago mostly to give Australian voices more of a voice. Or at least if anyone wanted to dig deep enough to find Australian Melee, they'd actually find something to talk about. And well, if you've seen any of my other content, that didn't happen. I started interviewing random internationals.
A classic.
Yeah,
that's it was the Australian Melee problem.
It was so. Here's the thing, right? It was like I interviewed Sora in 2019 when frankly no one knows about him, right? And then I hit the second episode. Somehow I get hacks on the podcast. That was interesting. And then by the third one I get watch. So it's like by that time I was like, hang on. I forgot why I'm doing this. I guess I'm saying this because I'm really glad to talk about this with you guys, right? Because I feel like Australian Melee is a really, really unique perspective for the international scene, right? Because pre-Sora, actually even Spud, even after Spud, I don't think anyone gave a fuck about like Oceania Melee, to be honest. Because why would they, right? And now Sora's on here, and now people are like actually looking like, hey, who else is back there? People are coming to Phantom. That's going to be exciting as hell, by the way.
Yeah, I'm super keen for Phantom.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about you guys. Over the last few months, I had no idea who you guys were last year. No offense.
I don't think anyone did, to be honest. Like legitimately.
Yeah, and
pre-COVID.
Pre-COVID, no one knew who you were. Around sometime last year, we have a little group chat, a little Discord server that doesn't get used anymore, called the Big Boys Melee Chat, with Melodic, Yoda, Murmur, Socks in there as well, actually. And someone was like, hey guys, who the fuck are Bundun and Berk? and Melodic was just like, I don't know, like I didn't quite get them before, but now like I really like what they're trying to do. I wasn't used to their brand at first, but now I'm getting it, and I was like, okay, that's the first time I heard of you guys, frankly speaking, because I hadn't seen like much stream at the time. I was real busy. ORB Melee for me, and I think for some other people, even kind of popped out of nowhere to start hosting events. The fight night thing was really unique, actually. So how did it all get started? What is ORB Melee? How did it get started?
I could probably take this, and maybe Brandon, you fill in any gaps.
Yeah.
So we started the ORB Championships, which is just our online tournament series, in the second lockdown that Sydney had. So that was from June onwards last year. And the thing that actually prompted us to do that, this was Brandon's idea. We'd been to 2 in-person Melee events. So we went to Phantom just before the first lockdown. And then we went to Battle Cat Bunker, which is a local that was sort of in between the first and second lockdown. And we had a really good time. And Brandon at some stage said, I reckon we could do this, and I just think we could make it more fun. And that's not to say that the events themselves weren't fun. They were really good, but they were sort of just like fun because logistically they were pretty well run and you got a whole bunch of people playing Melee. But I think Brandon had this idea of we could make it a little bit more hype. And because both of us have this background in powerlifting where you have an announcer and there's a lot more audience participation and things, we just sort of had this idea that we could make it a little bit more like fun and communal. And so going into the second lockdown, we'd both played in a bunch of online tournaments, and Brandon's a particularly good streamer. And at one stage, I think we just got a little bit bored and went, let's just put on a tournament and see how it goes. And
Wait, actually, before that, I actually wasn't streaming before that. I used to stream.
Right.
So I used to stream like, I don't know, 2017. Around then, RuneScape streams. And like I just doing it fucking around, and then I kind of stopped. And then that happened. We went to the tourney, and then we're like, let's start an online tournament. We're in lockdown, fuck it, whatever. And I'm like, all right, cool. I'll just run it through my stream.
Yeah,
and then
that's correct, isn't it? Yeah. So anyway, we ran this first one, and the idea of the first one for us was basically just learn how to do it, because there's another tournament series in Australia, Beginner Beatdown, that I had helped commentate. Actually, Brandon had done some spot commentary and stuff, and so I'd had a little bit of a look at the back end of Smash GG and things, but I didn't really know how it was going to work. And Brandon, like I said, pretty tech savvy, was good at streaming, but hadn't used Melee stream tools or anything. So he sort of thought, let's just do one to make it a bit of fun, see how we go. And so our first tournament, we promoted the idea that we didn't really care if you followed the rules or not. If you wanted to gentlemen, we said like play secondaries, gentlemen to random stages. If you want to change the rule set, do it. Like whatever, just come in and have a good time. So we set the tournament up to do that. But we also began at that point branding ourselves with the whole ORB thing. And a few of the things that we wanted to do to set ourselves apart was just having slightly higher production value than the average online tournament. And that also meant dressing up and sort of making it a bit of a spectacle. So I'm 99. We wore suits for the first one.
we
I
wore
remember.
suits and we got really drunk. I got really drunk the first one.
You were so wasted. I was also pretty drunk on the first one, but that became a bit of our shtick. So at that point, by the way, no one knew who we were. I mean, people knew us from Beginner Beatdown, but that was it. We just popped up and said, we're going to run a tournament. And so these people tuned in for this random online tournament. And the first thing they saw was 2 guys, gelled hair, suits and ties. We were both wearing glasses, getting drunk, and just running this tournament that everybody had a great time in. And from there, we were basically hooked on the process because we got such good feedback. And so for the duration of that second lockdown, which ended up being, I think, 14 weeks, we were running tournaments every sort of 2 to 3 weeks, and they got successively bigger and bigger. And we ended up having some tournament that had 70-something entrants in it after like 3 or 4 iterations.
That was so wild. When we got the 76 attendee one, I think we were obviously not next to each other, but I felt like I was on a call with Berk and we were looking at each other like, oh, fuck.
We sort of created this monster where it was just, if people wanted to go in ORB events, we were having a really good time. We sort of had the branding down, and the more we did it, the more we thought, well, if this is being well received, we're going to double down on the things that are making it well received, which are the sense of community, the branding, the way we dressed ourselves, and stuff like that. And so we did. And, you know, I go back to Brandon's technical skills heaps. We started doing lots of publicity stunts and making promo materials. So we were spending our time in lockdown getting dressed up and, you know, like running around our suburbs, filming little bits of content that we could cut together. You know, we wrote rap videos, like we did anything we could to drum up attention. I wrote to the Sydney Cricket Ground Trust, so a stadium in Sydney,
right, dude.
to ask them, Yeah, because we'd been promising Orb was going to be so big, we're going to run it out of a stadium. So I wrote to them and said, can I hire your stadium to run the next Orb event because it's going to be so big? And I have this email sitting in my inbox asking me to call them and talk about the event because it sounds interesting, right? So we're leaking things like that out on a weekly basis into the Smash community, all just in the name of fun. And, you know, by the end of that lockdown, we'd just become, I would say, the most popular tournament series that was being run in Australia at the time because, yeah, we just had more fun. And then Brandon, you can probably take over from here to talk about the idea of Fight Night because that was pretty much you.
So I was like, okay, I want to do like a spicier event. I have one of my moderators, his name's Nightmare. He's Rat Ronald on Twitch. And I was like, dude, what do you reckon? Like, what's a good idea? And I was like, I'm thinking of something like, I love UFC because I love UFC and MMA. So I was like,
sure,
I want to go something down that route. What do you reckon? And then we kind of just like, for that next like 20 minutes, we're like, we could probably run something like WWE, like MMA kind of Smash event, run it like this. And then I was like, hey, I'm going to grab this idea with the belts, with the weight classes, and I'm going to throw at Berk. Because pretty much this is how our kind of relationship, Berk and I's, work. It's like, I come up with dumb idea. I'm like, this idea just needs logic behind it. Who's a logical person I know? Berk's logical. Berk, have this random shit. And I'll just throw it at him and it'll just be, and that's literally all the Orb content. Sometimes it's also Berk just has stupid ideas all the time too.
The reverse is often true. I often come in with an idea, like if you look at the skits that we did for the last Fight Night, the majority of it I thought of, but I'll come in with an idea that's like, it's an idea, but it needs that extra like 30 to 50% that takes it to being magical. And that's where Brandon, being very zany, comes in because he'll see something and go like, let's just make this more ridiculous or here's how we can produce it better. And it turns something that's like okay into magic, you know?
Yeah, I think that's pretty much how Fight Night started, that process, right? Where it's like,
I was
this is the general idea.
By the way. Do you remember?
I don't really remember too much.
You told me, when you first told me about Fight Night, I was like, I don't think this is going to work unless it's got rules around it. Because tournaments people understand.
Sure.
But this idea, and the first Fight Night in particular was a little bit scuffed. We basically went around trying to recruit people because Brandon spoke about weight classes. What we did was basically break players into categories where we said, you're a lightweight if you're a beginner. So roughly if you qualify for beginner beatdown, you would be a lightweight. And then the heavyweight division would be anybody PR'd or above. And sort of people who sit in that space in between, we would consider middleweights.
Sure.
And we would have for each one of those, we would have a title holder. So we would have a title fight between people who we think are very good within that category.
Sure.
And whoever is holding the belt at a given time will be challenged, and you fight to sort of win the right to challenge those people.
I think originally as well, we had planned like a point system, so it became more tournament-y, where like you'd get points to earn yourself a title shot. But then it kind of that crumbled, and we just became matchmakers.
I remember that.
So, but the thing is, originally we're asking people to like nominate themselves and which category do you think you'll go in and so on. And it just became this logistical nightmare. But the core of it was this really good idea. And I think this is what Brandon really nailed, which was you want to watch Melee that is well contested because it's really good to watch Melee, even between beginners who are like going at it.
Yeah.
You want to have Melee that's well contested. You want to have storylines and you want to sort of be able to create a little bit of hype around it and give people in the community a chance to experience high stakes tournament matches when, particularly for the beginners, you often don't get that.
Yes.
And I'll pass it back to Brandon in a sec, but going back to the sort of MMA, WWE type idea, what we very quickly realized, so, you know, the championship series, the thing that made it successful was just higher levels of engagement and making everything more fun. And then this, I think the thing that really made it super successful were storylines and production value. And so the more we lent into the sort of WWE aspects, and so we'll talk about the content and stuff, the more we lent into that, the more we created storylines around our fighters and hyped up rivalries and things and turned it into a bit of a spectacle where everyone's in on the joke, the more people loved it. And now Fight Night is incredibly popular. Brandon, back to actually how it came to be though.
I think that's about it, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And then, now we're Orb, and there are our events.
We do a bit of both, and we're going to do a local sooner or later.
That's the goal.
Yeah, the local has been this idea that every time we think we're going to do it, coronavirus restrictions come back in somewhere.
I'd also love to make, because like originally when we started, right, it was at a local. So then I still want to run, like I need to learn how to run a local first. I think it's also Berk does too, like we both do. But I do want to make it like different. You know, I don't want to just have a generic local. I would love to be able to do weeklies because I just think it's fun and good vibes. But we don't really have time to do weeklies and run that all the time. No. So I'm thinking of like bigger hit events, and it will be a major one day, which will be really fun if we do. But that's the goal.
Well, I can see.
I mean, like I'm certain that we will end up being a major because just like the rate of growth of everything else that we've done at this point. Like if I were to pinpoint the reason that our events have done so well compared to, or not compared to others, it's not a competition, but the reason why ours have really stuck, it has been that desire to do something a little bit different and make it fun first. You know, I learned this back when I was working in fitness. I tell this story all the time. I was quite successful in filling my books as a trainer, and I used to put in heaps of effort into like the quality of my training and into putting out content that would educate people. I had a podcast that did well. I wrote articles. I did all this stuff. I wrote nerdy things on Instagram. And I thought that was the stuff that that made people gravitate towards me. And so at one stage I went around and I surveyed all my clients and said, why did you start training with me? And something like 2/3 of them mentioned my dog. They thought he was cute and fun. And
correct.
And then a whole bunch of people started telling me that they thought I was really funny online, or that it was cool that I played guitar, or like just little things that made them relate to me, the person. And so I still did the things that obviously showed that I had substance behind what I did. Just like when we run Orb events, we still run good events. They're well organized. They're fun. Yeah. But then I really lent into showing people little elements of who I was. So I would do dumb skits at the gym. I invented these characters for Q&As that were actually kind of ripped off Nun's Bond and Wizzy fan characters where I had, so I'm Will Berkman. I had a guy called Bill Workman who would wear his full powerlifting onesie, reflective sunnies, and he would answer Q&As in like a really meat-headed alpha male way. And then I had another guy who Brandon named called Mil Norkman, who he wore a propeller hat and these stupid blue light blocking glasses and a NASA shirt. And he would answer questions in a really nerdy, overly scientific way. And I would do things like that, and you could literally see the engagement tick up whenever I was dumb. And I think like going into what we did with Orb, we always focused on making sure the tournaments, like I said, ran smoothly. But there just always had to be something extra to just make it fun to be related to us. And now when you go to a Bundun stream or you go to an Orb stream, there's all these people who want to be there and want to be involved because there's something to resonate with in it. Yeah. And I think a lot of other online tournaments, they give people a place to play and everybody wants to do that, but they don't actually create a sense of community or belonging just for showing up to those tournaments because they haven't really focused on that fun element. And I just think that's something we do really well.
I mean, the very first episode that I did for MTAL actually addressed exactly what I'm about to say that Orb does, which I actually find really valuable. My very first cast was actually asking Sora, hey, is there a way to get more people interested? To raise engagement, basically, and more importantly, for a person who may not have, let's say I have a friend, they have played Smash at a party. They might be pretty good at their party, local or whatever. Then but they have nothing to do with the competitive scene. There's no bridge, right? There's no bridge for a person who thinks they're kind of good, but doesn't actually give a shit about competition to actually have a look at the tournament scene and say, hey, actually, I do want to try this, right? And it's not just because I want to be the best or whatever, right? It's the energy in the room that I don't think is easy to translate to someone who has never been to an event. And I think what's really interesting about Orb, especially like the weight classes thing, is incentive. Because when I first started making PR videos, I was really motivated by the fact that some of my not PR'd friends were saying, I want to make PR now so that I can be in these videos because these videos look great, right? Whereas I think the weight class thing has like a similar effect where you get to be up on, if you will, the big stage, shout outs, no fluxes. You get to be up on some sort of big stage without having to burn half your life away, because 10 people make it onto each state's PR. We have 300 people at our biggest BAMs, right? That's a lot of people that are not making it, right? And I think that was what was really valuable when I saw Orb and what it was doing with the weight classes for the first time. And then it started drumming up even more attention, because then you had the international classes, and I was like, oh shit, this is really going somewhere. I can see this, right? The same person who tunes in to watch Crudo versus Zuppy may actually just stay to watch Chibe versus RNG, right? And I think I think that's fucking sick. I think that's really, really, really cool, because when are you going to get that kind of exposure? It's a treat for a new player, right? So I thought that was really smart of you guys.
I think, again, this sort of comes back to the sense of community around both Orb events and Aussie Smash more broadly. One of the coolest things is our lightweight belt fight this last fight night was between Rainbow Calyx and Kessler. Mm-hmm. And they've both been in the scene quite a while. They've both played in a lot of beginner beatdowns. And I know Kessler's a regular at locals, and I believe Rainbow Calyx goes to quite a number of locals as well. Mm-hmm. There were really high-level players in the chat who were cheering on either of them and who feel related to them. Yeah. And I think that's super cool as well. And that's something actually I'd shout out Finray in Australia for really contributing to as well. Like Beginner Beatdown, which, like I've mentioned it a few times, it's a tournament series that allows beginners and lower level players in from which you graduate when you've won it a couple of times. Mm-hmm. That tournament series has really raised the profile of that lower tier in Melee. And just like you said, there's always going to be, like if you looked at the distribution of players, mm-hmm. there's always going to be way more lower level players than higher level players. So it's important to give them a place to feel important and that they belong. And then to see that reflected in the way the community engages with them, I think is super cool.
I think that was at the very start of Slippy's lifespan. I think within a couple of months we had something really, really similar, but it didn't stay. It was like something Sunshine, something like that. The whole
yeah.
You might remember it. It was
it sounds familiar.
It was Rise and Shine, wasn't it?
Right, something like that. Rise and Shine or something. And the whole point of it was that, hey, if you've picked up the game during Slippy, right, only those players can enter. So, like for example, I'm still low enough level where I could potentially still go into a beginner beatdown. Rise and Shine was not for me, as an example, right? So it was really for like purely new players who had started with Slippy. That had a surprisingly high number of events, and I was like, I love stuff like this because it's exactly the very first issue that I ever tackled, is that I want more people to know about Melee, right? The reason I do, to anyone who's not in the Smash scene, I'm just this goblin who doesn't shut up about esports and Melee and something like that. And it's like, well, the reason I do that is because I want this. I want what you guys do. I want people to be able to say, hey, what's Melee? What's Melee in Australia, right? They do a couple of searches and they're like, what the fuck is this? This is like a semi-scuffed but really funny looking OBS, like OBS stream with fire and flames, like GIFs just kind of on the side. These commentators are taking it mostly seriously. Holy shit, we're drunk, right? I don't know. Something about that vibe I think is really unique, because I hate that it's like, it's either the Foundry where it's everyone's drunk in grassroots and none of the stakes matter, or it's Evo, right? The top level of competition where people barely swear on commentary, let alone anything else. I really enjoy that you guys are bringing this kind of bridge to bridge a gap, if you will.
I'm curious to ask Brandon a question.
Go for it.
When you were in the States, was there anything that you saw as like uniquely American about the tournaments that you attended, like, or even the locals, as opposed to things that feel Aussie in the scene?
I feel like in America, because there's more people, and I went to the bigger tournaments, so it's also hard to say. I went to a couple locals. That at the bigger tournaments, I felt like there was more separation within the players. Like, people weren't as close. When you go to an Australian event, regardless if it's a small local or a bigger event, I feel like everyone kind of knows each other, and that's one of the advantages of being in a smaller region. Whereas in America, it felt a bit more separated. But I'd shout out to NYC Melee. When I went to their local, it felt very Australian in a way, because I went there, I was instantly welcomed. Everyone knew each other. They introduced me to other people. It was good environment. It was very inspiring for me. The production was really good. The venue, that was really well done. It was pretty. It was nice. It was unique. It had its own vibe. I'm sure people have probably seen a nightclub before. I think they also have a fight club as well. The whole idea, just saying.
The octagon? That's such bullshit.
Besides that, I'm only kidding. But going to that event was really cool. And to answer your question, it's like, I feel like there clearly is something unique about our region. I feel like people are much more close in a way. But in the day, I feel like it's still all Melee, And the people in Melee are quite similar, I find, regardless of the region.
I think, I'd be interested if you agree. I think because our scene is a little bit smaller, there will always be a lot more intermingling. Like, you remember today, you and I were talking about tutor groups at school and that idea of vertical integration. So the idea that kids from the higher year levels have to interact with the lower year levels. Well, pretty much that happens in Australian Melee, because if you go to a local, the last one I went to, I think there was 25 entrants or something for Melee. So not that many. If you're Sock, the number 2 player in Australia, you're also going to bump into me. I went 0-2, and a bunch of other people around the traps, but all the time. Yeah. And if you attend your Melbourne local, you're going to see that all the time too. And there might be 3 or 4 players who are right at the very top, but you're going to spend some time integrating with the people who are newer in the scene, or interacting, I should say. And I think in doing that, you also nurture them a little bit. And so I have a lot of personal affection for a lot of high-level players in Australian Melee who I don't really have any business playing friendlies with, because they just whoop me. But I still like hanging out with them at a local. And when I do, they'll play some friendlies with me, whoop me, and tell me how I could be better. And I think that's a real luxury that maybe you wouldn't get if the scene was way bigger.
100%. That's exactly the difference between American and Australia, in that kind of way. There's other differences, but that's probably one of the big ones as a lower level player, I would say.
Yeah, I think I wasn't sure about that, and I was going to ask about the US in a little bit, right? Because what I wanted out of interviewing you guys was actually talking a little bit more about international Melee, right? To most people from the US who might watch this podcast, they're I think it might be interesting for them to figure out who else is in Australia and why should they care and why does it matter, right? But I think that difference, I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little surprised to hear that the separation thing, because my experience. You first.
It's not that big. Let's not go crazy. It's just something I kind of felt, and also I did go to bigger tournaments. That's true. And then when I did go to one of the smaller locals, I went to a couple of small locals, but especially the New York one, I felt that connection. It was some of the others ones. Also, at the time I was going, because there were all these big majors going on, the locals were also popping. And I was also in the area, when I was at the local, I was in the area of the major. Yeah. So that local also had a lot of players, right? Right. So that would definitely influence that for sure.
That's true. I think my hope is people are still at least able to experience. I've talked about this before, but my first time meeting Joshman, Sora, I don't know what do I call him anymore? I don't fucking know.
Sora/Joshman.
Sora/Joshman. I'm gonna go with Joshman for now. The first time ever meeting Joshman was actually when he was down in Melbourne. There was a guy down the road, a Falcon player who was a little better than me at the time, called Drools, right? And he was saying, hey, you're literally 2 minutes walk from me. Just come over to my house. If I've invited some Smash players, let's play, right? Okay, so there's 5 people in there, and in walks Joshman. Have either of you seen Joshman in real life?
Yes.
Yeah.
Brandon travelled with him for 5 weeks.
Well, no, obviously, yeah. I should more for Berk, but he's tall.
Yeah.
He walks
really
in.
tall.
He walks in. He's like 190 or some shit, and I'm just like, oh, who's this extremely tall, lanky gentleman, right? And he walks in, and it's within like 5 minutes of meeting him, he's like, it's very clear he's whooping everyone, right? And that's not that big a surprise at that point in my time. But it was like on that same day, right? Because I was clearly the worst player in the room at the time. He actually like sat down on the side CRT and was literally like, okay, this is why you dash dance. Do you understand that? This is why. I was just like, why is he like, this is great. Why is he talking to me? Why is he okay with talking? You know what I mean? I feel like that separation, if you are like me and you before coming to any kind of Melee scene, you spectate a lot of Melee. I feel like there's a mental distance, right? And to see kind of a top player of that caliber just kind of say, hey, no, what fucking distance? You're actually stupid. What are you talking about? Right? I don't know. It was really heartwarming, and I'm glad at least to think that in most locals, especially the NYC, I would have faith in them having that kind of connection.
Yeah. I think as well, it's like in the American scene, because there's such a bigger player base.
Mm-hmm.
Like, let's use like a Mango, for example. Let's say,
Sure.
I don't think Mango goes to local, but just say Mango goes to a local.
Mm-hmm.
Think about how many people would want to have friendlies with them, you know? So I
Sure.
think as well in America, so there's such a large population, it's like you go to a local, fuck, all the 100 people there are going to want to play with you. Whereas in Australia, like, you know, our recent local had like 25 people, and that's pretty good for us.
Yeah.
I'm assuming if we had a weekly, we'd probably get like 10 to 15. It's very easy to interact with with the vast majority because the numbers are a lot fewer. But also I think that specifically is a credit to Josh himself, because even when I was in the US, it was Josh would give me a lot of time in friendlies and would help me out. And like, he wasn't kind of talking down to me. He was like teaching me, like playing the teacher role.
Yeah.
And I could see him actually doing that good teacher coach role, because he'll then, after playing me, would verse someone like Magi or something, right? And they'll be discussing the game, and I'm like, that's gibberish to me. So he's like, he's like, I'm not only gonna like have sessions and talk to him about the game, I'm also gonna like tone down my nerd level so this guy can like actually understand and get better at the game.
Yeah.
And it helped me so much, dude. Like, it actually helped me a lot.
I think like when you have a real passion, and Josh is a good example because Josh literally goes to sleep watching Melee sets and then wakes up and watches like he's told me that, you know, that's just how much he loves the game.
And League of Legends, by the way, just saying.
Is he
He's addicted to the content.
I just saw your respect for him.
it's cratering. But when you have a real passion for something, and you know, most people in the Smash community are passionate about the game, you kind of want to share that with people. It's like your chance to like indoctrinate them into your little thing that you just love. And so being able to sit there and see somebody who's passionate but doesn't quite appreciate just how cool this thing is because you don't know why you dash dance or anything yet, to show them that little thing, like each little bit of knowledge you get about Smash is rewarding. Every time you learn how an interaction works or what someone's looking for or what they're thinking about, and you begin to understand the game more, it becomes more rewarding to play, it becomes more rewarding to watch. And then the reward of engaging goes up, and then you become part of the community. And so I think it's really important that people go out there and are like advocates for the game and, you know, bring other people in.
On that note, that we are, you know, we're talking specifically more about like Joshman and bring people in, I guess. What I wanted to really talk about was what it means. Joshman is probably the most. I mean, he's to the point where you can watch a Mango video and you can hear him talking about Joshman, right? Even if it's just because Joshman's in the fucking chat and he's saying some shit, he's talking shit about Leffen or something, right?
I saw that recently.
It was very fun. It was really funny.
What did he say about Leffen?
He basically just said he was going after him.
Yeah, you know, it was on that stream, that video. It was a tournament that they were slotted to play, right? And before they played, Joshman was just like, "Oh yeah, I'm slotted to play someone after Leffen," And then Mango was like, wait, are you insinuating that you're just going to whoop Leffen? Because I'm about it, right? And well, my point is, I think a lot of people know who he is now. From an Australian perspective, what do you think it means for us to have him spreading the good word, if you will, about us?
I can take it. It's just opportunity, you know? It's actually crazy because, like, obviously, he's like, people like Joshman because of his character and he's good at the game.
Sure.
And because he represents our country as a funny dude who's also really nice, will go out his way to help you. And he does that to everybody. Like, he'll go, doesn't matter, like, every single place we went in America, doesn't matter the level of Melee, you know, he would be very nice to you and very, like, open and, like, be your friend. And, like, so that just looks great on our, you know, on our scene. And that's awesome for everyone in Australia because, look, the more, like, clout Australia has, the other top-end players like SA Nick, Sock, you know, the whole list of the PR players, they get now opportunities to go over to the US. And the importance right now to be in the US is huge. Just because the skill level is so different and how important Melee is to be played locally, it's very, very big for the scene. So what Josh is doing right now, you know, getting, you know, the following he deserves, is amazing for the Australians. Even people for like myself who are not players, they're just like, I guess, entertainers or commentators or TOs.
Sure.
This is really good for our scene, I feel.
I think I have a couple of things to add. One, I think it is really important to be able to feel affiliation with people who are representing you overseas. Like, I watch pretty much every US major, or at least like large parts of it, because there are certain players that I'll always want to follow the storylines of. I'm a huge Mango fan.
Sure.
You know, I love watching Plup every tournament he's in. I love watching None. Like, there are people I'll always tune into their sets if I can.
Yeah.
But having somebody who you can say you know them personally and follow that journey makes you feel just so much more engaged. So I think that that's super important. I don't think it's actually incredibly important for the player who is, you know, at maybe my and Brandon's level because we're probably not aspiring to ever go to the States and play there. But I think seeing that like for the people who are aspirational, that it genuinely is viable. And for Josh particularly to have recognition of the work he's done and the skill he's developed, I think that that's very important.
Sure.
And
Well,
so
sorry, can I quickly add on that because it's kind of important? I think similar to that, Josh being in the States and being successful shows low level players aspiring to be high level players, or all those players that it's actually possible for our region to do that. Because a lot of people will just assume it's just not possible from Australia. They'll be really pessimistic about it. I can't make it. But like Josh showing like, you know, you can do it. This is what I did. I'm good. Still can keep up with these high level players in the US. It just be like, it is possible to get to that level. But then it does get hard once you are at that level to take the next step, you know, to be like that top 10 player. But that's a different point.
Yeah, I think it makes people who, like, I think for the people who have aspirations, it makes them more realistic, more tangible. And I think for us, it gives us somebody who feels a bit closer to our hearts to cheer for when we're watching stuff in the States. For the Australian community at large, it probably hasn't made the hugest difference. Like, I don't think ORB signups increased on the basis of Josh making Summit, say.
Sure.
But I don't think that really matters. I think that it can only be good for us to have representation in something like this. And I think, you know, it just makes it more exciting for everyone.
That's fair. Do you think, and I guess this is again for both of you guys, because this is kind of an up in the air question. For most of the scene, which is, let's be real, not here, right? It's in the US. Why do you think the average person might actually have to give a shit when it comes to internationals? Or do they? Maybe it doesn't affect them. Maybe it's just like, oh yeah, there's a couple of internationals that get better. So what? Like, what does it do?
You have this?
I got a little cool like point on that. So one of the interesting things for when the Australians went to America, which was SNIC and Josh, and vice versa when they're playing other players, like I'll hear them talk, and it's like let's use SNIC for an example. He's a math player in Australia. He's
Sure.
about number 2, even-ish with Sock. He's developed all these tools with math that counters the Australian players. And he's been developing them specifically for the Australian players.
Sure.
And so he has all these, all these cool little tricks that he's learned. He then goes to America, and the Americans are like, what the fuck is that? I've never seen that. And he has an infamous like double fair he does. And everyone's like, what? No one's ever done that to me before. So the importance for the American scene is like, if you get more small regions come, you're just going to get pretty much better Melee as a result, because you're going to see more things, cool little options, cool little combos, all that kind of stuff. That's the first thing that comes to my mind. And obviously it works both ways. It's like bi-directional. The Australian player then can learn the US skill sets.
I think Melee is a spectator sport as well. Just this is sort of piggybacking on Brandon. It's so narrative based. Like the reason that we still care about a game that's 20 years old is because of storylines. And I think when you throw in unknown elements, like when Armsa first beat Mewtwo King, insane. Josh shows up to Summit, gets Gastro, but then comes back and plays some incredible sets. People are suddenly going like, holy crap, there's this guy that we've never even heard of. He's great. And Josh's Fox has some things about it that I think are really different to what I see in a lot of the US-based players too.
True.
And so it adds a bit of interest. But to answer your original question, I actually don't think people from the States have to care much about overseas. They've got a huge scene. They're doing just fine. But I think that it's nice that they do. And I think part of, or at least the way I see it, part of our motivation in trying to get international involvement and international eyes on what we do with the ORB events and with Fight Night and stuff is because I think that our scene here is really cool, and it's their chance to have a bit of have a part of it too. They've all been so excited to make Australian jokes and interact with Josh because he's a novelty. And then when they get a chance to look over here and see this really vibrant scene, we've got great players. They're really hyped. Like if you were watching BAM Grand Finals and you heard everybody quacking when Duck took a set off stock, that's exciting. You tune into an ORB Championships, you see two guys in suits getting pissed and commentating and stuff. There is something fun and unique about the Australian scene. And so you can think of people like Josh and SA Nick and stuff and even Brandon going over as like ambassadors where, the average United States player doesn't need us, but it just enriches their experience of Melee to know that we're there and we have our way of doing things. I think that's super cool.
I would think... I guess I wanted to ask that for more of a selfish reason, I guess. I think I don't know whether you've noticed, I have very little national identity, right? I'm part of the Australian scene because it was where I went to uni, and it was the place that actually had a Melee scene. I've been, for the record, long before I came to Australia, I was yearning for some kind of Melee scene at all, because Malaysia at the time had none, and I was like, 17? I'm not going to start one, right? I guess in a certain sense it's kind of narcissistic, but I do agree in a way that our scene and the way we interact with each other, it's tight knit, but I think there's something that goes further than that, right? It's wild. How do I say? The reason why I'm hesitating so much is I'm trying to dance around the idea of saying Australian humor is fucking bonkers. Because when I think about my locals back in Melbourne, because again, most of my Melee scene was in Melbourne, right? It was grand finals or a hype set or whatever, and Skip or someone in the background while Don B's trying to freaking concentrate, trying not to get out absolutely mind gamed by Dave, right? And it's just like Skip starts playing fucking Despacito on a UE 300 meters away at max volume while people just monkey scream, and it's just like, I'm standing there like, I didn't know what to expect out of a Melee scene, but fuck no, it wasn't this. Right.
Dude, that's so when we were at Genesis, it was like midnight, like maybe 1 a.m. or something, and people are still gaming. I think it's the midnight after day 1 or day 2, so people are still excited. And I'm there with, I think it was Josh, Gareth, SA Nick, Huey, I'm going to be missing some people here, but none was there. And people were playing friendlies. And everyone's like fucking tired, like sitting there gaming, like grinding away. Like, this is a cool opportunity. I got to play all these different players. And all the Aussies at this point are fucking wasted. And we're just sitting behind friendlies, chanting songs that Gareth wrote. Talking about Joshman in a bottle. And it was like, so like that experience, I think what Berk was saying as well was like, I do agree. It's like, you don't need to watch us, but you're going to want to watch us because we are quite a unique scene, you know?
Yeah, I think the second you know, it's like a good TV show. You don't have to watch it, but once you start, you're happy you did.
Yeah,
exactly. Like, just got to give people something to make them want to be invested, you know? Like, and yeah, again, that sort of comes back to the things we're doing is just try and make it fun. And when it's fun, people stick around, you know?
I guess that's most of the US-sided questions that I had. Do you, when you say, you know, the international heavyweights, do you have, I guess, what's the future, what's ORB looking like in the future? You talk about, you talk about locals, and you talk about maybe a major one day. What are those looking like? And is Fight Night good where it is? Is that going to get expanded? What's the go here?
Okay, put it this way, and I kind of thought about this when I was in the US, and I was talking to SA Nick because I was with SA Nick and Josh for most of the trip.
Sure.
Oh, by the way, in that story before, I forgot to mention Dom Hines. I feel bad not mentioning Dom Hines, but he was
Dom's a fucking boy. Dom's a fucking
Sorry,
boy.
anyway, I was with SA Nick and Josh a lot, and at the end of the trip, I kind of realized like I think we're talking about potentially running like a summity event in Australia, and like SA Nick is an interesting one because like he has aspirations to be a professional player, but it's just really hard. Like you need to go to the US, you kind of need a sponsor, right?
Right.
He doesn't have the money to just fly to the US, fly back, go again, enough. You know? So it's like, I have aspirations of making events so big and huge that Americans will need to watch. Because right now, Berk's right, they don't have to. But if we can make an event so big and unique and different that helps show the Australian scene too, I really think it will help not just like obviously ORB, but like everyone in the scene. So like I got aspirations to make a sick major that, you know, Phantom had got all these players coming in. A lot of that was just Josh's work, just grinding.
True.
And then the Yard boys being like, fuck, okay, we'll help him out too. We're going to go as well. And then, kind of scales from there. I want people to be like, fuck, I can't miss Phantom, or I can't miss this Australian event, or I can't miss the ORB major just because it exists, not because we're pushing for it, you know? So I guess that's my future goal. But it's also, that's just like a fun end game goal to work towards as well, while we're having fun and making cool events.
I'd pretty much say the same. I mean, like, I'm in a weird period in my life right now where I'm in a career transition, so it's harder for me to make short-term plans than it is for me to make long-term ones because I don't know what I'll be doing in 2 weeks.
True.
But in the long term, my goal in every Melee event we do is just to make it so much fun and so engaging that no one wants to miss out. And, you know, the end game should be to have big events. Like, I want to run locals, and I want people to love showing up to the locals because it's like a crux of their social life. It doesn't have to be the only thing they do, but I want it to be something where they're like, I wouldn't trade it. I want our online events to be great. And like Fight Night, it doesn't have to be bigger, it doesn't have to be more often, but I just want it to be better value every time people tune in. Like this time we had 3 great content pieces, 2 amazing international fights, and a whole bunch of good local sets. And every time people come in, I just want them to feel like, I want to watch this installment and I can't wait for the next one. So we've already begun planning some ideas of like narrative.
They're silly, dude.
Content pieces. We've got one in the works I think is really funny. But I just want to do it better and better every time. I want the videos to get better, and I want people to be so excited to be involved that they want to collaborate with us. Like, it was really cool. The one before last, Skip produced a little video for us for one of the fights, which was really funny.
Yeah.
You know, because again, he just thought this is a good event that I want to lean into. Like, I want the community to be so excited by what we do that they feel both indebted to it and ownership of it. I want them to just be like, this has to have legs on its own because it is just so cool. And the end game of that should, be big, consistent events that people just have to attend.
that's like, while you were saying that, I don't think that's like out of the realm of possibility given our trajectory as well, right? I mean, frankly speaking, like Orb is it's proceeding faster than I thought. I'm not gonna lie. Like I thought it would I thought it would grow. Like I saw the event for the first few fight nights, and I was just like, well, this is a really cool idea. I really like this. We could get some like internationals like interested and stuff like that. But like now you run fight nights and it's like 700, 800 viewers. It's like it's not long before you hit like the 4 digits, you know.
I mean, that's not because of us, to be honest, but they did stay to watch.
They did stay. They stayed. They stayed. And that's what matters.
But I think it's only a matter of time, because next fight night we will have Moki back, and Crudo called out Bobby, and like people will show up to watch Bobby Big Balls, and then from there it's only a matter of time. Like dragging Armada out of retirement's the end game. I haven't said that until now.
Leave the poor guy alone, man.
He can
Spud Armada.
I don't know.
What those two, they can rest. It's fine, but it will only get bigger, you know. And again, that's the fun, and the people who feel like they've been there from the very start, you know, and who know all the storylines and are in on all the jokes and have seen it grow. They've been part of it growing. You know, everybody who gets in Twitch and talks or promotes Fight Night on their Twitter or what.
Oh no, that's the boomer internet right there.
Oh no. And what?
And that's the coolest thing.
You just cut out for a bit, Berk, and your camera's frozen. Yeah, you're back.
Where was I up to? Because I was being inspirational.
You were pog facing, and I lost all train of thought of what you were saying. You were like, and then you froze.
Super Debo. I was saying that like it can only get bigger, and the people who've been there from the start have owned part of its growth and are going to be invested to stay. And so everybody who gets in the Twitch chat and talks to us promotes Fight Night. Everybody who posts on Twitter owns a little bit of it. Everybody who's played it owns some of that success. And so if it does get to the point where, you know, whatever it is, we're dragging Armada out to play Spud, and then if you played in Fight Night 1, that's partly on you, and that's super cool. Like I don't know. I think that's the best possible thing.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I won't harp on too much longer about it, but I do think, like, even right now, every decently large scene has things to think about, right? Like, if you think about Mexico, you know Smash Factor is their thing, is their big thing. You go to Europe, and right now, you know, it used to be Beast, now it's like feet. I don't know how to pronounce that word. Like, that's their thing. Battle of BC just happened. Obviously, Joshman had his little run there. And, you know, that's now Canada's big event. I don't think that BAM or even Phantom like ever quite reached it. So I'm really looking forward to seeing the growth. I think the fact that our little fun methodology, if you will, brings in a different crowd in a way and keeps them. The engagement is different. The engagement is real different.
I reckon Phantom this year will go bonkers.
True, though.
True. I mean, we've got so many good people coming. I can't see it being anything other than like an insanely good fun tournament. And again, sometimes you just need one thing to kickstart it. So what I imagine is that we have Phantom, and then Orb Fight Night 8 is even bigger.
I agree. It actually has potential.
if we just piggyback off Phantom enough, and then from there, it'll be Orb Fight Night 16 by the next Phantom, but people just won't be able to miss it.
Dude, I might give out Orb Fight Night business cards out of I'll set up a little scuff store and to be like, here you go.
Yeah. You'll
we'll make t-shirts. That's actually a good idea. I'm coming to Fight Night.
Yes, dude, that's such good content.
And we'll give them to top. This is actually how we think of ideas, by the way. Very often, we'll give them to top players and take pictures with them, and we'll just start leaking them before fight nights.
That's so.
That's
so
and
big
just
brain.
set Twitter on fire. This is how it works.
Big brain, dude. It's so smart.
Yeah, that's such a good idea.
Y'all are actually marketing people at heart. How did y'all get stuck in powerlifting? Y'all are marketers.
Oh, I'm out.
True. You're just like, why do you think I'm not there anymore?
Yeah, no, it was taking up too much of my time, so I said I'm going to have to wrap this business up. Yeah, focus on Fight Night 8 because it's going to be huge.
I love that.
I love that. Thanks again so much for talking. I think it's really good to have others to talk about international representation that have been through more of the scene, I guess, than I have, coming from a similar background, from as me, I guess.
No, thank you so much for having us. This was fun.
No, thank you, dude. That was a fun little chat. I had a great time.
That's a wrap on another Melee Through a Lens episode. Thanks so much to Berk and Bundun for taking the time to talk to me. It was a lot of fun, and please be sure to keep an eye on ORB and future of Australian Melee. International viewers, watch out for Phantom on the 16th to 17th. It's the biggest event we've had for years. Zane, IBDW, Jmook, Mango coming back for the first time since BAM 7 like 7 years ago. Neotono is coming to rock with the Ultimate Boys. It's gonna be nuts. Thank you guys for making what I do possible, and I'll see you guys soon.